welcome everyone to our brown bag seminar. So we have a full house today, which is nice to see. And yeah, we have René Röpke with us today, who's assistant professor at TU Vienna and who leads the LTeD Lab and the eduLAB, but he's also leading the didactics circle. So we have some kind of inter-circle interaction or collaboration today, which is nice. And yeah, he'll talk about educational games. I'm sure it'll be an interesting talk. So without further ado, stage is yours. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So welcome to everybody and welcome online as well. So today I want to briefly talk about some things. I will hide the Zoom features for the people here in the room. I think that might work well, right? All right. Let's start. So the talk I'm giving today is called Educational Games, Designing Engaging Risk-Free Learning Environments for IT Security and Social Engineering. This topic is dear to my heart because I did my PhD thesis on exactly games for IT security topics, in particular phishing. And I thought I brought my results and ideas that I had through this time with me today and link it to the responsible computing aspect by saying they are risk-free learning environments in some sense, but we will dive into that in a minute. So maybe to introduce myself again, thanks Kevin, but I will share some more details. So as you said, I'm the head of countless things and involved in countless things. I'm also a member of the STEAM doctoral program. These are many people here in the room, but my new responsibility as an assistant professor includes the eduLAB, which is the educational outreach program of the TU Wien Informatics faculty. And therefore, we deal with how to teach computer science to children of all ages, starting at 7 years old up to Matura, and even students could visit our office if they like. My background is computer science, so I'm not a teacher by trade, but I look at didactics a lot. So I got interested in that, but I started studying computer science, but from the very first day, I was like, okay, learning is fun. I like learning. I did after school like tutoring when I was younger, and I thought about how can I improve teaching and learning with technology in my bachelor thesis and also in my master's. But in my master, I also dove into IT security as a second topic. I completed also a master's degree in IT security to further my studies, and then I decided to do my PhD, and the topic I landed on after some tinkering was personalized learning games for anti-phishing education. My first questions in this round, and I want to kind of ask you to raise hands. We could also stand up if you feel like it for lunch, but who of you has been a victim to a cyber attack? Something like a stolen account, identity theft, I see some hands raising, data breaches, malware, or ransomware. Oh, countless hands, countless hands. Probably your institution got hacked or something. Who of you has been victim to a phishing attack in particular? Who has been phished with suspicious emails, tricky links to click on, and maybe targeted attacks? Okay, raised hands. Has somebody been victim to smishing, like receiving malicious SMS by your parents or like children? Dad, I lost my phone.
You mean only attempted, not
attempted, not yeah. You've been victim, but you fall for it, or usually. But okay, there have been attempts, and there's also things like phishing, just voice phishing with AI even more prominent. Than people get called by these suspicious people that are so wealthy and want to share their money, want your money, whatever they want. So there are countless vectors of attack there. And I see some hands in the group that there have been some victims or at least attacks on you. Who of you might not know if they have been attacked? So of those who haven't raised their hand for example, phishing, would you say you probably received some phishing in the past and you don't know about it? Since most of you raised their hand, so probably that's not for today, but sometimes people don't know. They're not sure. They think they are sure that they behave securely, so why would they, right, be a victim? But they might not know, even though they have been victim to an attack. And they also raise the questions of why would somebody target me in particular? Like, I'm just an employee at a university. I don't do atomic bomb research. Why would somebody hack me, right? What is in there for me if I hack the didactics guy of computer science? Like, but usually the hackers don't want you, they want access through you. And therefore, not knowing might not shield you, and therefore it is interesting to look at it from all angles. And my last question is, who of you has participated in some kind of IT security training? All employees usually, right? So you probably did some kind of IT security awareness training or some kind of in-person workshops or online probably. Most of them might be video-based if they're online. You saw some videos of fancy animations, people like, why would be attacked and how does it work? How do they operate? It might have some tests in it and might be also interactive that you have to kind of show your knowledge after passing through these videos, but they can vary a lot. So how these trainings are designed can vary a lot. And I want to take a look into games now. But before that, I want to kind of reintroduce, and maybe some of you know, but I want to reintroduce the human factor as a concept that is looked at in IT security, because when it comes to security, we of course have the principle we want secure systems, but in the end, a system is only as secure as a human who puts it in place, who configures it. And often security breaches happen due to a human error. Like something is misconfigured, they have weak passwords, they write them down under their keyboard, on the back of their screen, somewhere there it's written down, or they fall short of social engineering attack where somebody convinces you that they are in charge and you should give them access to something that you usually shouldn't. The human factor is therefore critical because technology alone cannot ensure your security, because even though the system might be secure, if you give out your password like on a flyer, then it's okay to enter the system, right? Because I have the password as an attacker. And therefore this human behavior kind of needs to bridge the gap that then the security might be, the systems might be safe, then it should be the humans bridging that. But even systems cannot be safe if you configure them wrongly. And therefore we need to kind of combine these aspects. And we need to stop attackers who exploit our trust and curiosity and oversight in order to stop them from kind of attacking the first line of defense, which are the people. And this brings me to the case of education. So knowledge is usually power, as somebody said, and with knowledge being power, we need to educate end users. It's what we all do with different topics, but we need to educate educators here so that they can make smart decisions, informed decisions, to be able to identify threats, and so that nobody can say, I'm not sure, but I am sure that I'm attacked or not attacked at the moment. And therefore, simulations and training can also be used to improve awareness. And here it comes that when we look at education, we can create certain scenarios where the real world risk is placed outside of the educational scenario. So we can deal with something in the educational scenario, but there is no actual risk. In an educational scenario, some system can send you an email, you can click on the link without fearing being attacked in this moment, because you can try out, you can simulate what happens, but you don't have to actually fear that it happens to you. And today I want to talk particularly on phishing. Phishing is a scalable act of deception whereby impersonation is used to obtain information from a target. This is at least one of the definitions that was found in the literature as most unified and covering all the important part. So let's take it apart a bit. Phishing is a scalable act, so somehow it works really well in large proportions with many humans, and it is an act of deception. So somebody wants to trick you, and usually they do that by impersonation, by being someone you trust, by being an entity you feel you have to trust, and they do that in order to get some information from you via some actions that you have to do, or we are giving simply out these actions. And when we look at a typical phishing attack, and let's play that through once, we usually have some kind, for example, like a website. Let's take your local bank website. You know that it's one of these Erste Bank, probably, or an Austrian, other Austrian bank you might know. And this bank has a website that can be copied by somebody else to look just like it. It's basically the same look and feel, but the system behind the website is malicious because there's an adversary, an attacker, which creates a copy of this website just looking like the original. And then they decide to embed a link into some kind of communication media, like an email, and send it to countless users. They send it out, and when you receive this email, you open it, and you might click on this link. For you as a user, you just receive an email from your bank, you click on this, and you go to the website, but here it happens, because you enter this website, you might enter your credentials to log in because you think it's the bank website, if you don't know better. And then the adversary gets access to your account because you actually give them the proper credentials to get access to your account. And when we look back with this, the attacker can run, they can take your identity, they can take the money, the information they needed, and they are successful. Looking back at the human factor, we see two elements, the third and the fourth step, where the human factor could be addressed. Whenever you interact with this context, you could be educated, you could be trained in order to behave better, to recognize the attack before clicking on any links, in order to avoid the actual success of the attack. So the motivation of anti-phishing education as a subtopic of security education is to educate the end users about the threat itself, how to recognize it, the risk and the situational awareness, so when it happens, and also possible countermeasures. And anti-phishing learning games, on the other hand, are now engaging learning environments, which help learners to learn about the threat, the topic at hand. They can convey knowledge and allow you to practice certain skills. And as they are games and completely simulated, they are safe and consequence-free. So basically, you're not fearing any attack, even though you might lose in a game by falling for an attack. And therefore, it allows mistakes. There are countless examples. I just put them here. Some are quite kid-like, with a fish swimming through the ocean, not being fished. The wordplay is too funny, but died a long time ago for fishing, so it's very old. In the middle, you see a quiz, which shows you Google emails, which kind of look very similar to the Google email interface if you use a Gmail account. And it asks you whether this is phishing or legitimate. And the last one is a German application, a mobile app, where you actually look at URLs and try to uncover whether you trust this URL or not before actually clicking on it. With these games, there's a certain problem. These games basically ask you, is this phishing or not? They often use unknown services or URLs because for people in Austria, and these are the most people here in the audience today, I would assume, it's reasonable to ask you about Austrian bank accounts, Austrian services, and things you might use in your daily life. But when I show you the Bank of the United Nations of the Arab Nations, the Emirates, you can for surely say this email is not for me because you don't have an account, I would say. I would argue that you don't. And therefore, this lack of reference if a game is not suitable for you creates a certain inability to decide because you don't know the ground truth. You can simply sort it out, but you have to decide in this game. So you kind of are unsure if you don't know much about the service. The other part is that with limited, with no contextual relevance, there's a limited increase of awareness because if it does not fit my needs, I kind of throw it out early on and I say, okay, does not infect me, or I don't see how this would address me, and you might not make the transfer from the learning activity to your daily life into your actions online. So there's an inability of the environments to simulate an authentic environment. And lastly, and that's what I said, the games usually ask you whether this is phishing or not. From a statistical point, this is guessing because it's 50%, right? Phishing or not. You might have some pointers why, but you don't need to have them, right? You can just simply guess, and you could still progress in the game with a likelihood of 50%. And therefore, this binary decision mechanic does not really help us to learn anything about what you have thought as a player. And this is where my dissertation kind of took charge. I said, okay, there is a potential for improved game design by elaborating on these three aspects: the unknown services, the limited awareness, and the limited assessment with this yes or no binary decision mechanic. And I approached this topic, okay, how should we design actually anti-phishing learning games? And for today, I thought I summarize it up because my dissertation would be way too long. We have the game design, which brings countless aspects, and we have the security education. We need to bring them together. And in phishing, this might be suitable through linking the learning objectives and the game objectives, taking a look at the mechanics and dynamics and aesthetics of games in order to make them relevant to the user, make them kind of scenario-based, for example, on the security education side, to kind of design it that way. And we need to create an active and experiential learning experience that kind of relates to the users. And we need important feedback and assessment in order to actually benefit from the players playing these games and for allowing the players to benefit from playing the games themselves. And in security education, all of these aspects can be somehow linked. We need foundational knowledge, which could be translated in games. We need relevance and context. But one thing that is very interesting and that can be done, we also take a look at role reversal tasks and the adversary understanding, so we can basically switch roles. In games, you could be the fisher. You don't need to be the fished one. You could be the fisher and create your own phishing attacks in order to learn more about it. So with this at hand, I decided, okay, I want to extend the binary mechanic, and I want to address higher order cognitive processes. I want to switch it up, the gameplay. I did that on phishing URLs, a very small subtopic of phishing. And I did that with users without any prior knowledge. So no school or students in school or in university, but rather the general public where I don't assume any prior knowledge. I used Bloom's revised taxonomy to structure my learning goals and saw that there are two different game modes I can implement. One is rather analytical and the other one is more constructive in the sense that people actually create something. And when it comes to this game design, I will go briefly through it. I designed games that have a tutorial section, a level, and a feedback section where people get increasingly introduced to new concepts of phishing over time, and they play the games in levels and get feedback on that. And as you see here, there are two different themes, so to say. The one is more of a Roman theme, so not phishing at all, where you sort coins into different buckets. So I inverted the binary decision scheme in order by presenting different decision options to kind of capture why you sort something into a different bucket, depending on the manipulation you learned before that has been applied. And the example down below is in a hacker theme. You are now the hacker, you kind of learn how the URL is structured, and then you create your own URL with puzzle pieces in order to build something that is tricky enough to trick you, because it looks just like the Amazon link or the Österreichische Post link that you usually would expect. So basically, I took up this role reversal in the second game especially, and I said, okay, let's switch it up. Another example that was developed beside my dissertation, but didn't make it in the end into the dissertation that heavily, is an email phishing game where you kind of first have to detect emails. You kind of stamp where you think something suspicious is placed in the email, and you can reverse that by actually giving the user tools like puzzle pieces, elements, in order to create their own emails, or even a free editor where they can write emails, but also drag in certain suspicious features to make the email look like it is from a rich person offering you money if you click on that link. So here I use the role reversal concept. So basically what I say is learning the trick might be an interesting opportunity. Role reversal tasks could help to bring in a change of perspective, to understand URLs and composition rules. And we can also teach people the persuasion principles. And I base that on Cialdini's persuasion principles. They are here on the side for those who are interested. So we kind of teach people what phishers might have in the back of their mind, what psychology is behind it in order to persuade you that they are trustworthy, that you should click on the link, do the action they ask for, provide the information based on these principles. And this has also been used in other security education contexts. For example, there are things like red team, blue team exercises where people actually try to attack each other in teams, in classes. Or there's capture the flag competitions where people actually have an environment and they need to break in to steal something in order to win. So basically breaking the security on a technical basis is the goal, and others need to protect it by closing security gaps. And there's also some games for the people in HCI that might be interesting. We also look at deceptive design choices like dark patterns. You might know that when the hotel booking site says 2 other people book, look at this right now, or book now, 15% off only until tonight. You can also see that on ticket websites, because you can get the insurance, you can get the extra experience, you can get the short line and everything. You can buy more, pay more to get more, but usually you don't get more. But you also can get that just subtle when you buy a new phone, and it pre-selects the biggest storage size, the best configuration, and you have to scale it down to actually get the more reasonable price, because you don't need a professional phone. You might be happy with less, but still solid new phone version. To summarize, I looked at anti-phishing games, and that's what I brought today. I looked at the game design in particular to make it bigger, to make it better in some sense, and I looked at the role reversal tasks. And therefore, I'm happy to discuss. I brought some input because I'm interested in what is your experience with educational games and the assessment and feedback in games, as well as the role reversal task. What do you think about that? Have you experienced with that? And an idea to start the discussion also would be that the topic of social engineering, so phishing and these persuasion things, could also present an opportunity for role play instead of role reversal just. So we could implement it in role play. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think you've done very well on time. So I think we'll have, I know we have a tight schedule, or you have a tight schedule.
That's all right. We have a bit more time until
20 to 30 minutes, I think we can take. So are there maybe questions, or maybe we can also jump into your discussion input here?
It probably was
That's funny because I just did this educational game from the TU yesterday.
Yeah, you did the training, the course.
And then I have to say, had been these videos, and the voice of the videos was always the same.
Yeah, very much.
And so I nearly fell asleep, but you have to concentrate to make the test afterwards.
And the test is not nice, right? It is very detailed oriented, and you're like, where's the common sense of it? Like, what's the takeaway? I took that myself, and I usually hate these designs because they try to trick you to know a detail half pass of a like sentence, like you don't need to this detail, but it's less about the why is it that it is dangerous. Like there's less about the fundamental things.
I almost failed it because I didn't know the combination for locking the screen on a Windows.
This is now the recording.
No, I did not fail.
Yeah. As I'm involved in security research myself, I'm curious what your experience is about when is like a critical threshold when gamification or tasks for people who are trained for cyber attacks like switch to a point where you get annoyed. Because in my own experience, I'm also at the University of Salzburg, and there we have from SoSafe, I think they are called, this phishing training. And for me as a security researcher, it's obviously very tedious because most of the stuff I know just based on my daily business. But I also know from people who are not as involved with the topic that they just get annoyed because they have to click through so many mini games. And if you have some sort of experience when it's too much for training people.
So I think it depends on the topic you want to get across. So select one topic, a game might be suitable, but you have a collection of topics, and usually these IT security courses, they cover like 10 aspects of security in some sense, like how to behave in the office, a hallway, locked doors and stuff, but also email attachments and stuff. So if everything is embedded in another game, that's, in my opinion, also like somehow over the top and too much. And it kind of also loses touch because these games are usually very short and very simple in a sense that they cannot be much because you don't commit long enough to this game. It's not like playing Pokemon or like some action shooter game, like where you commit, like people sit there hours at the night, right? Hours for days and play these games. But these mini games, they overdo it by having multiple ones. And I would argue that in a certain sense, when you have a certain topic, you need to build on it. And if it's the same game developing, then the game developers and the interest might be able better to be kept up, and the users don't lose interest. So I would say less is more, but you could elaborate on the type of game and make the game itself more complex and more exploratory, like have it a story that develops.
Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of gamification in teaching and that, but I just thought maybe one can overdo it. And
definitely, I would say so.
Overdid it.
I think the minimal things, like imagine, for example, you get these points when you go shopping somewhere, if you have the membership card of something, right? And then you can maybe play an online game to get more points, and you can quadruple your points if you buy certain articles. And so somehow they overdo it as well, because you need to kind of develop a system in order to max it out, and that's not worthy, right? You're like, okay, now that's not worth my time, because there's no storytelling. It's just adding one more element and just one more element. And if they combine it more naturally and try to develop it, then it would be better. But that's usually not the case for gamification, because as we know, gamification is not changing the process. Gamification is adding game elements to it. For example, in learning, gamification is just throwing game elements into the learning process without actually changing the learning process. Game-based design, for example, game-based learning may change the learning process. And then I think then we talk about something different, but that could be very interesting.
And also as an addition, this training is also combined with getting a lot of fake phishing emails, training phishing emails. And I just figured that they are often done way better than the real ones.
Mm-hmm.
And the second part is that emails you get from a mailing list are often done so poorly with the way people are layouting them, and so that we have this other situation where you mark legitimate emails from university as spam or as phishing because they are less well formatted than the phishing emails.
Yeah, the dilemma of usable security, right? Like filtering it out, and then filters annoy you because the important stuff gets filtered. You don't want that, then you deactivate the security, and they're all for it. So I would say, in this sense, I think it's important to kind of try to teach fundamental aspects so that you can be capable of deciding it. And these too good to be true emails, like that are well engineered in a certain kind of test for safe, sends email in the company, and you want to click on it, and then you get a message. You could have been victim to a phishing attack. Here's a training to avoid it in the future. There's a dilemma with AI now, because the phishers will use that as well and will have very handy crafted emails in the future, probably. So I think there is a certain gameplay, a cat-mouse game, so to say, because we are only like trying to get ahead, but attackers are usually quite quick.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question. So you mentioned the human factors in the beginning, right? So what would you say are the kind of the most critical human factors? I suppose they're psychological factors, but which are kind of the most, exploited factors by these kind of attacks?
I think urgency is often very exploited, in a sense that if it feels high pressure and you are in a pressure situation, for example, in big companies where people on lower levels have so much work and they feel like they need to complete it, it might work very well, so they target that. And I think the other part that is also exploited quite well is the hierarchy part, in certain parts where they say, okay, I'm a person you respect and you would fulfill this for. Depending on the situation, in company, like in work context, that might work quite well, because there you have hierarchy. In a private context, these work differently. And I would say the phishing attacks that you get privately lure you to something that you desire or attract more. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't say that there's one that is more important than the other. I think in the end, they prey on the uninformed user in general, because you don't know about this persuasion that this might happen to you, or you're naive, you trust that, you don't question it. It's the same with information. For example, during political times, for example, when voting comes up next month, there will be more in social media and networks and communications about politics and misinformation and disinformation, all these aspects. When people are naive, they fall for that, right? But if they have a certain level of critical assessment of that, then they might fear it. And teaching about, for example, these persuasion principles would enhance people's perception of phishing probably more than just simply asking them whether yes or no, whether this is phishing or not, because the guessing would be
Yeah, it
avoided.
goes into kind of a follow-up question. So we have these vulnerabilities, like you mentioned urgency, and then basically as a solution we have education. So I was wondering how education basically addresses this this problem, right?
Sorry, again?
So I'm looking. So we have this human vulnerabilities, like you mentioned, urgency, and so I'm wondering how does education kind of address this problem that humans have, right? So you mentioned that there may be more critical thinking, but I'm trying to kind of see at what point does education actually maybe fix or solve these human problems that we have.
So basically by informing the user, it kind of decreases by a lot, I would argue, that because if you can name those and you can flag that this is actually a trick people can use because it is a trick that is studied in psychology, I think about it more often. For example, I think it works in other areas as well. If you tell people about, for example, separating garbage in different types, right? If you tell them and inform them and make them aware about the system behind it and the structures and why it is reasonable, they can think more about it and they might recognize wrong or unfit behavior in a sense. So if I teach people, if I use education to inform them, I give them the chance to use this knowledge. And by just assessing whether they can figure it out on their own with an email without proper background knowledge. For example, when I show them an email and it's not phishing or it is phishing, I can resolve that. But if I don't teach them, look at this email. Here is the sense of urgency required. Here's a pressure point where they saw it's urgent. Or, for example, predictable desire to return a favor. Here they ask you because they said that you agreed to it, or you would do that, or you fall short of this offer. So point out where it happens, then it would be more formed. So the feedback, for example, could also be very important because it teaches you more than just the yes or no, or the wrong or right or wrong.
I have more questions, but maybe somebody else has.
I have a question. Is there research what's the motivation of the fishers, despite that they want to make money or something like that? Is that you have a broader sense of their motivation?
So there's probably countless research on that. I don't have research at hand right now because it's less of the focus of mine, right? But usually there is some kind of bigger scheme, right, to get money, to get access, because then you can, for example, deploy malware. If you get access to a system, you can uncover the holes it has to get into it with technical access, right? If you can log in, you can scour secretly because nobody knows that you log in, because you don't break anything at the moment, right? If you know my password and you just see my laptop standing there, log in while I'm at the bathroom, I don't know that you've been here. But if you break something, then I might know, right? So I think the bigger attacks usually for phishing are to get access to employ further things like malware or ransomware, for example. And when universities, for example, I think they got countlessly hacked over the last years, they want access to the system in order to pressure, like to encrypt it and then pressure for money. So they don't care about the secrets of the university. They could care if it's kind of like war research strategy, something in political, for example, they could be caring about that. But the phishers, they say, I can just encrypt it and ask for money. That's enough for me. I don't care about information. But there are also targeted attacks, which might be otherwise. They target for some specific information. But it's countless reasons that why they lose. Maybe to give a question back, some of you experience with games that use kind of this role reversal in some sense, in other topics, or some kind of role play also in games. Like Olivier, of course, you have that, right? With a dissertation on live action role-playing games. But do you have any experience with games where people take a certain perspective in order to learn about something?
Of course. Design games.
Design games,
So
okay.
we have these design games to be used in several projects to tell people so if it's about mobility or street transformation or whatever we do, or consensus making in street transformation. Then we say, you are not you as a person, you are this person. And then we describe exactly, you are an elderly, you want to have quiet places and you want to go there, etc. And then this is your role. And then we give also additionally the goal to this person. So you have this role, but to make it more concrete, and your goal is in this street to do something, and then they don't show their roles and goals, and they play the game, and then they discuss, they decide, they do something. So and then find out at the end of the game, they show why they were doing these things, because their roles. So, and we also try to match the people to another role which is not representing themselves, because this makes additionally the understanding of how this person would think if this person is actually involved in deciding the common thing. So I think this is also aha situations for the people. So, you know, the bicycle drivers got suddenly the role, they're car owners and they want to use their car overall. So this is for them first, I don't like it, but then in the role, this changes also with the people. So I think they
embrace it.
This is very interesting development in the first round. In the second, they do everything what they think that this role would do. And I think this is also the overdue in that sense. But then you get, if you analyze the data, there are very interesting things, how these people fill in fit themselves into the role, and then also doing, you know, we're not expecting that. What is happening now? Yeah, this is too much. Stop.
They start to get mean.
Yes, start to get mean, and then normally they are against this. I think the role, and then this is gamification factor. So people trust, and they say, this is not me talking. This is my role talking and acting, and this is a very interesting factor. So you can get a lot of things. Design games are very good for that.
The whole like design games and consensus thinking, because they have a certain role, they uptake and they kind of behave like that, or try to think what is the behavior of that role, that sparks curious insights into people's minds.
Really good.
That's the whole thing. And I think that's also why I think the topic of social engineering could present an opportunity for kind of these role-playing characteristics, because it sounds funny, but on social media there are these videos of people wearing a security vest, like an orange one, taking a ladder and walking into concert halls with a ladder through security, because they have an orange vest and they just walk through without a ticket.
Of course.
So what do? They kind of engineer the situation, because they know the ticket guard won't stop me if I have a ladder, I look important, I have some badge bandle on here. It could be my driver license or some old card or something. And they impose as people that are kind of important and get access because they are part of it, but they're not, right? So here this plays out in reality, and I think in social engineering we could do the same. We have these games, you know, I know maybe some of you know the leisurely played game Der Widerstand, which is also like similar to Werewolf and all these like role-playing games. You play secret agents, and there's a group of moles in the group of agents, and they go on missions, and at the end of the mission they vote with tokens, and then the moles have to vote against or for the mission, depending on whether they want to be uncovered, right? And so these games kind of also take a role, and then you try to use the behavior of this role.
Another kind of game, what we really like to use in teaching is it's a very bare bones, purest solution, but text adventures. And they are especially suitable for teaching about organizational security, for example, because you take on the role of social engineer and can play it alone without having to interact with other people, but still have to engineer the situation in order to get access to certain areas within the game.
So some elements of text adventures like this, you take a role, for example, it's embedded in the intro to this game. Here you're a new employee at the company, and you should kind of make the training, but the training program fails, and you should kind of try to kind of create new examples yourself, and then you kind of get guided through that with another person guiding you through that. And I think the extension to text adventures is these game books, where you kind of have different paths you take depending on your decisions. So the agency level in these games is quite high, because you decide the game path and kind of take up a role. And I think that can be combined quite suitably and be very big in the social engineering domain as well.
You say role reversal tasks, right?
Yeah, role reversal tasks. So if we switch up the role to be the adversary, the attacker, right? So that's why it's reversal. And there's a team.
Maybe, René, we can talk about that if you are, if you are in the social engineering process, that maybe we can find something with this design games and then different things, because our students in the design thinking course, they, for instance, yesterday they had 10 different design games played in Aspan, in Seestadt Aspan, with people, with children, with citizens there, and they're also among each other, of course. I think this was very interesting, what type of ideas they have, and then how this role playing is also integrated. Maybe this could be also something as an input to analyze.
Yeah, I think it.
If you are interested in having a certain cooperation with finding out, can we analyze these things? We were all three there yesterday. I think they were very interesting ones.
Yeah, we also talked a lot about similar things that could connect our
Maybe
research.
you should come really to our presentation days to see what is happening there, and then it could be also for you maybe some ideas.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think we also talked about the security domain, right? But these design games, if you say there's an opportunity to get some insights and to kind of see what you did so far.
The subject is consensus making in this, as this year's subject is to consensus making.
Yeah, I think I did an interview with one of your groups.
Yes.
Yeah, I did one.
As an expert.
Yes, an expert. I was an expert on gamification. So I did one interview. So I thought it would be interesting. So if there are result days, just send me the dates, and if I can make it, for sure. We will see, and future pulls up more time.
Yeah, because this gives material, so you have the different things that are happening. So I think the teaching should be integrated into our research. So for that point, if you can make use of it, I think we are very willing to share this type of different aspects and do something together. So,
sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
We have about 10 minutes, maybe last question.
Yes, if there is a last question, I'm happy to take it.
I have one,
yes.
Then you just need to kind of be brief with it, I guess. So I want to kind of elevate it a little bit. So cyber threats are kind of basically online harms in more general. And then in my research area, more on kind of misinformation and kind of hate speech, what they recently what's the new thing to do is they use inoculation theory based. So basically they say we can digitally vaccinate people by exposing them to weak forms of this threat. So in your case, it would be a cheaply made phishing attack. And then over time, by kind of exposing them to this, they'll be more resistant to the real attacks. So are you aware of this kind of, well, at least from a theoretical point of view, that people in cybersecurity are also kind of approaching it like this?
I think Raphael talked about it with these, when companies deploy campaigns, where they actually send out emails that are from within the company and look still very fishy, and then you click on it and then you're like, you could have been a victim of a phishing, like reveal that. I think that's the part where they kind of try to sensitize you in a sense that you get vaccinated, so to say, by small interventions. But I would argue, depending on how they are made, they are either trigger some, in a sense that people hate that and feel annoyed by that, and then they stop taking the message that they should take from that away, right? Or they are too big and they take up too much time, so they are not feasible to do. Because what I would love to do is, after I hit someone with the phishing attack and I get someone to click on something, I would try to help them actually sustainably learn about to avoid in the future. But then it requires some kind of training, right? Some kind of education. And I think that's where it kind of stops and people say like, okay, this is annoying, we can't do that, or we won't want to do that. I think there's the difference. But also we tinkered with the vaccination term in IT security project proposals in the past, but then COVID hit and then vaccination had a different meeting. So we stopped. But yes, I think there are certain parts that are similar, but I think the education is very heavy.
Yeah,
like
because I thought when you made this comment, it's kind of different in a way, because if you think about hate speech, it always hurts people if you use kind of derogatory terms and stuff like this. But with this phishing, people sometimes feel like it's so cheap, I'll never be a victim of it. They have a different, I think, feeling of this harm of this attack.
They reduce it often a lot. Why would somebody attack me? Or like I can for sure spot that. But wait for AI. I'm not sure whether people can spot that. I just, I think in the morning I read on LinkedIn that some company who does like they do virtual agents, like actually highly graphical agents that are in online meetings for work, like for example HR training and stuff, and they get $180 million for like further development. So AI agents will be very convincing in the future. And why wouldn't fishers use that if it's available to everybody, right? So, and I think that's the same for hate speech and disinformation part. It's a big thing, and it's hard to keep track of and run this or fight this cat mouse game.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a good note to end it on, I think. Or
My
not so
question was about AI, but you just described how sophisticated
But also we have more
might
time to
be
discuss
in the
that.
future. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, so thanks again for.
Just the
Oh, yeah,
problem is because I just did this kind of education thing yesterday, if I know it today again. If I remember.
The retention, right? The retention is hard. So in my dissertation, we did 3 months later testing again, and we showed significant increases still compared to the pre-test before they actually learned anything about it. But it is something that needs to be done regular, in a sense that they need to be sensitized over and over again, because it's something you can avoid and still use it. So for example, why should children learn about security and online behavior? Because without learning about it, they can still use it, and they will not stop it. It's not like, okay, I won't operate a atomic reactor. I won't do that because I don't know how it works, but I use the internet, even though I might not know how I behave securely. So I think retention needs to be with reiterations.
And also the development is very fast, I think.
Yes, very quick. The next year's training should look different. Otherwise, you would be annoyed if it's the same again. All right.
Yes, again, thanks for your interesting
Thank you
talk.
for the invitation. Thank you.
Thanks for having